Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Regional Development Assessment Panel meeting of the 30th of October 2024. I declare the meeting open at exactly 1 p.m. I acknowledge we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and are joined by people from other lands around the state. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia. We pay respect to elders past and present and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the RDAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the RDAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Regulations 2011. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may also refer to technical advice throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. Apologies have been received from Mayor Greg Stocks and Councillor Malcolm Trail. We have no members on leave of absence. And item 4, no minutes. The minutes of all previous meetings are available on the RDAP website. Moving to part B of the agenda, City of Albany. I'd like to introduce the panel. My name is Dale Page. I'm the presiding member. We have Clayton Hyam to my left, who is the deputy presiding member. We have Robert Carlser, who is the specialist member. And we have Deputy Mayor Paul Terry online and Councillor Lynn McLaren. Hello to everybody. We're also joined by officers from the City of Albany, and we have some representatives from the applicants with us today. Karen Wright and Luke Mifsud from Urbis Consultants, and we'll hear from them shortly. Item 1, under Part B, declarations of due consideration. I'd like to confirm that all panel members have duly considered all of the documentation contained within Part B of the agenda and Part B related information. By a show of hands, could you please acknowledge you have reviewed all that information? Thank you. Noting that an R13 direction response was published on the 24th of October and further information received from the city was published on the 29th of October. So I'm hoping you were able to access all that information. Item 2, disclosures of interest. There are none that have been raised in relation to this item. I invite any members to declare any additional declarations of interest they may have. Any members have any additional declarations? None? All right. I note the standing declaration of interest that if the agenda items have been considered at a council meeting, the local government DAP members acknowledge that in accordance with section 249 of the DAP Code of Conduct 2024, that they've declared they've participated in that council meeting. However, under section 212, the members acknowledge that they're not bound by any previous decisions or resolution of the local government and undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to the matters before them. Could I please confirm whether or not these did come before a council meeting or not? No? Excellent, thank you so much. Moving then on to item 3, Form 1 DAP application for lot 869, 177 Chester Pass Road. In accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024, clause 482, presentations are limited to 3 minutes, and I'm going to invite Karen and her colleague from Urbis, Luke Mifsud, to present to us. I will give you the heads up when we're nearing 3 minutes.
Afternoon, presiding members and staff members. My name is Luke Mifsud. I am a consultant from Urbis. Today we are speaking in support of the proposed application. However, we are seeking a request to reconsider one of the conditions, that is condition 7. bit sensitive, sorry. As you can see, this is the broad location of where the lot is, and you can see its proximity to Brooks Activity Centre down in the southeast corner as well. Sorry, there we go. As you can see, the site plan, the proposed warehouse extension is located towards the rear of the lot, away from Chester Pass Road, and the existing dam will be relocated due west as well, about 20 metres. We've got a proposed landscaping plan, if it just makes it a little bit clearer on what's happening, as well as the proposed landscaping improvements that are happening to the site. Formatting's gone. So just the proposed development, it's a proposed existing warehouse extension and 20 metres relocation due west. The extension is about a 25% net increase, give or take, in the gross floor area. The parking has been adequately justified and accepted by the city, and a comprehensive landscaping plan has been prepared as well. So just on condition 7, requesting delineation. So the extension itself will be barely visible from Chester Pass Road and does not adequately relate to the Brooks Garden Centre or Chester Pass Road development itself. So there will be no relative streetscape improvement or impact on the Chester Pass Road frontage. The city, we've compared the policy or the application of the policy to the wholesale batching plan, which was considered by the regional RDAP panel in 2021. And we've provided justification for that in our memo. The proposed use will have minimal public interaction, therefore not aligning with the objectives of the policy of fibre.
We've lost volume this end. Presiding member, we've lost volume.
I can't hear.
You lost audio from.
Where do you leave it?
There's your hand. Put your hand.
I think Dad lost it.
Then
No,
we
it
have-
looks like that.
Where's the RDAP now?
Just me.
They've dropped out.
Can you hear us by any chance? Oh, we're back. You lower your hand.
Obviously, they can't hear us.
Had a little drop out there. Can I just check with the applicant? You mentioned your client is on the line.
We understood that
They would be attending.
so I was just checking if they,
Did we have noticed that they'd be
yeah,
there?
there is someone that I can just add them in. Apologies about this. And that was really just if you had any questions, the architect and the applicants online, so any of us are available to take questions.
Just bringing him into the room.
Thank you.
Client is Matthew.
Yes.
Matthew, can you hear us at the minute?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So you're online to answer any questions that we may have. I might move to the section of the agenda then where the panel members are able to ask questions of the presenters. Do any of the City of Albany councillors wish to ask the presenters or their client a question?
Just in relation to the public art policy, I note that in your presentation talking about it not just applying on the Brooks Garden estate. However, the policy does say that it does apply in a general, sorry, doesn't apply in a general industry zones, but would apply in a light industry zone. So just would like some clarification from your point of view why you think it shouldn't apply.
So generally we don't think it should apply, just simply due to the fact it just doesn't reasonably relate to the extension. It is just simply a warehouse extension. It's not relatively changing the streetscape or the actual frontage itself from the existing development, from where the public can see. Especially from the Brooks Garden Centre itself. So we really don't think the policy should apply.
Thank you. Any further questions from the City of Albany councillors of the applicant? Not at this point. I might ask the other panel members, do you have any questions of the applicant? Mr. Hyam.
The landscaping component of this development is along Chester Pass Road as well, is that correct?
It's primarily along John Street, I believe.
You did show some.
Somewhere.
Yeah, there's a little bit along Chester Pass. Yeah. Then
wouldn't it be correct that the policy applies to the site and not to the exact location of the building that's being built?
So in our consideration, so we've taken into consideration the fact that, as Luke said, it is an existing development, and then we've looked at, okay, if it was a new development, how would you apply the policy? But as an extension, how would the policy be applied to the extension? And that's when we've overlaid that with the considerations of the precedent that has been provided by the city. We do challenge, I suppose, in some respects, the fact that it is relative to the light industry and the general industry, but not applicable to general industry. That's a broader consideration in terms of, the applicability of public art condition under those. There's a pretty similar situation yet for it to apply to one and not the other. We think that there's inequities in that in itself, but primarily because of this situation where we're saying, the extension is less than 25% of the existing build form. It is tucked away at the back and it's less visible, coupled with the fact that there's the policy does talk about the intention that the site would also be publicly accessible, and we already know that there is limitations on the public access because of the existing operation. We're seeking an exemption in this particular instance.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, just one other question to do with the fencing that cuts out into the road reserve. Can you explain what your clients are going to do with that?
We're willing to take any further direction from the city regarding the fencing. As we understand, the fencing has been applied as a condition of development approval as well. So we'll take direction.
Does it affect business operationally?
It will affect in a very minor way. So the application of that condition will not consequently impact the overall operation of the development. We acknowledge it's been picked up by the city, and we would accept that we have to deal with that in the way in the manner that it's been proposed.
Right, thank you.
Anything further?
No.
Mr. Carlson, any questions from you, the applicant?
No, I have questions for the council.
Thanks. Just to touch on the questions that have previously been raised, I'm interested in knowing what that enclosure that's encroaching currently gets used for.
from what we understand, we haven't got clarification yet, but from what we understand, it's either storage or as a showroom operation. But we don't have clarification. Maybe perhaps in that.
Am I able to ask that question of your client? Yeah. Matthew, are you able to answer that question for us?
I did speak to my client about this earlier today. My understanding is it's just storage of product on pallet spaces out there. But yeah, that's all I was advised on.
Okay. Just a question, what impact would reconfiguration of that area do you think would have on traffic movements and safety if you were to reconfigure that space?
The enclosure space?
The space that's
Encroaching. As I said, I think it would just be absorbed back into the overall development. I don't understand that. We couldn't say conclusively, and maybe Matt can answer this, whether how much public access is occurring in that at the moment, but given that the client was of the view that it wouldn't have a consequential impact, we probably at this stage need to probably just accept what their advice is on that, and that they were accepting the condition would be able to be implemented.
Yeah, it's a pretty negligible space for our clients. So yeah, they're more than happy to have that condition issued as part of the approval, and work to address it in line with that condition.
Thank you. There being no more questions of the presenters, I'm going to invite any questions from panel members of City of Albany officers. I have a few, but I may revert to the local government elected members in the first instance. Councillors, do you have any questions for the City of Albany staff?
Yes, I do, Presiding Member. Just generally on the public art question. So I'd just like some clarification from officers in relation to how it's been applied, and talk about that wholesome batching plant and why that was taken out in that instance.
Thanks, Councillor Terry. So the percent for art is a scheme provision. It's not just in our local planning policy. The planning policy sets out where the development applies, where the condition will apply, and how we'll go about assessing percent for art proposals in consultation with our visual arts team. So it applies across the board. It's not, unless it's otherwise exempted in this policy. So it doesn't matter whether the main part of the development is fronting Chester Pass Road or fronting John Speed, it's still applicable. With respect to the wholesome batching plant, I think maybe Jan might be best placed to answer that one. Were you in that meeting?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think that was in the general industry.
Yeah,
I think it didn't apply because it was in the general industry area. And at that time, although it wasn't sort of exempted yet, I think we were moving towards that direction, and was less, I think that was the reason. In another batching plant, in the Cali Street one, that was a similar batching, it was also a batching plant in a similar situation where the public open space condition was actually placed on the RDAP approval. That was in a different setting, not on John Street. Similar scenario.
Thank you. Councillor Terry, any further questions from you?
No, thank you, Presiding Member.
Karen?
I had a question, if I may, Presiding Member, and I'm new to this process. This is my first regional DAP meeting. And so in my learning curve, I wondered if you'd indulge me. I just have a question about the assessment, the environmental assessment, which says that in order to be really sure about what's present on the lot, they needed to assess during spring, and yet they didn't assess during spring. So their report says quite clearly, we didn't do this, and it's likely there might be other things during spring. So how do we accept an environmental assessment which has that declaration in it?
city officers? Can you answer that?
You have to excuse me, I came into this project late. The officer that wrote the report's no longer at the city, but I believe we had some members of our team with some environmental expertise visit the site, and they said it looked quite degraded, and they didn't have any concerns with the removal of that vegetation, specifically the area where it was being extended to. Apparently it was quite low grade, degraded vegetation.
Okay.
Any further questions, Councillor McLaren?
Well, I had a question about what, are they relocating the dam? And what is the dam used for?
Yeah, the dam's being located to the west, I think about 20 metres, and that's for stormwater purposes.
It's just a stormwater temporary, yes.
Yeah.
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Other panel members, Mr. Hyam and Mr. Carlson, any questions of the city officers?
I'd just like to go back to the art policy, and perhaps officers, if you could just explain again why you don't agree with the proposition being put by the applicants.
Okay.
That it doesn't relate.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree first and foremost that it's not visible from Chester Pass Road. I did a drive-by a couple of times, and it will be clearly visible. It'll also be clearly visible from John Street, which is the other frontage. And in any event, the scheme provision would apply equally, regardless of whether it primarily fronts Chester Pass Road or John Street. It's worth noting Chester Pass Road is one of the busiest streets in Albany and represents the main entry into town from the east, while John Street provides access to residential zones to the west and a high school and TAFE. So they're both very busy. It's also worth noting the development sits adjacent to a neighbourhood centre zone, service commercial zone, and another light industrial zone. And I think it's a substantial development. It's adding 1,700 square metres to an existing warehouse with a height of close to 10 metres. It's going to be clad in primarily blank colour-bond sheeting, and necessitates, I think it's about 4,000 square metres of additional paved area through the clearance of vegetation. Although we don't have any concerns with what's proposed, the significant changes precipitated by the development, we believe ensures the test of validity referred to by the proponents in their response has been met. The requirement's been applied consistently across the City of Albany, including along Chester Pass Road and other side streets along Chester Pass Road. So we can't really see any exceptional circumstances that would warrant a departure from the scheme requirements in this instance.
Does your policy allow for a cash in lieu option?
Yes, there's two options. It can be developer provided, or they can provide cash in lieu to our visual arts team who'll procure a piece for the site. Okay,
so and that could presumably be in the newly landscaped frontage to Chester Pass Road.
It could be. We wouldn't limit it to that place, but yeah, it certainly could be.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Carlson, any questions from you of the city officers?
No, you've answered my questions. Go ahead.
I have a few, if you don't mind indulging me. That encroachment in the verge, was that identified through assessment of this application? Do you know how long it's been there?
It was identified through the assessment of this application. I had a look at the history of the site, and I don't think it was there in 2009, but somewhere between 2009 and 2015, I think it was first constructed.
And what is the rationale for trying to address that non-compliance via a planning condition on this approval versus standard compliance action under the Local Government Act?
Given the enclosure is shown on the plans, which they're seeking approval for, we're worried that if the plans are approved showing the enclosure on there, then the enclosure would inadvertently be approved under this development application, which we don't think it's capable of approval given it's outside of lot boundaries and concerns with materiality and those sorts of things.
Okay, just in relation to your public art policy as identified by Mr. Hyam in your policy on page 4, there are 2 options. The applicant owner can coordinate and deliver the artwork, or they can pay a contribution to the city, who will coordinate and deliver. That contribution, does it need to be used on this specific site, or can it go into a pot and be used for artwork somewhere else? I guess what I'm trying to identify is if every development on this road did an extension to the value that kickstarts your policy, is everyone going to have a piece of public art out the front of their premises, or is the intent that you would take a contribution and look at something more strategic?
We normally take directions from the proponents on that. Some applicants prefer to have the artwork on site, while as others would specifically request that they don't want to provide it on site, in which case we put the money in a kitty, I'll call it, until we have enough to provide an art piece in close proximity to the land. I think that the key is it does need to be close by, but we can collect from nearby or other applications and provide one central.
Thank you for that clarification, because that doesn't come through in your policy. So it might be worth nuancing that a little bit. In your view, what sort of public art to the value of $20,000 would be suitable for a site and location like this? Do you have a view on that or not? If you don't, that's fine. I'm just asking if you do.
We normally take directions from our visual arts team on what they consider appropriate, but I mean, others on Chester Pass Road that have been provided are sculptures. I think, can you think of any others on Chester Pass Road?
The Bunnings development was the water tanks, a mural around the water tanks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a mural on the water tanks. That's really good.
And Western Power has done a facade treatment on their buildings.
Okay, thank you for that. Just in relation to the report talks about fencing, and it's not the encroachment, I'm talking about general fencing, and it states that fencing is excluded from the DA, and condition 5 requires a fencing plan to be approved prior to commencement of development. Is this going to need to be a separate DA?
If the fencing is consistent with our local law, then a development application won't be required. There just wasn't the detail to determine whether it was or was consistent. I'm not sure they had at the stage where they had given that too much thought yet. So we just thought we'd defer it to give them a chance to consider their options in that regard. Okay,
thank you. Nearly there. Condition 13. So I understand the intent of condition 13, and it states the development hereby approved shall not prejudicially affect the amenity of the neighbourhood by, but not limited to, the emission of noise, vibration, smell, smoke or dust. In my mind, this condition is a little vague and open-ended and could be open to interpretation. Is this condition essential? And if so, could it be tightened in your view? Is it a standard condition that you use?
It is a standard condition, but I do acknowledge it's a bit open-ended. I think it's mostly, in this case, it's classed as light industry at the moment, so maybe it helps to stop it ticking over to that general industry. But no, I do acknowledge that it is quite open-ended, so I would have no objection to that being tightened.
Okay, last question from me. On page 9 of your report, as part of justifying the parking shortfall on the site, there's a comment that should there be an issue with parking in the future, the site is large enough to accommodate the additional parking spaces. In your view, what would be the trigger for requiring that to occur? Would it simply be at the owner's discretion to include more parking if it started to get a bit squeezy?
I think it would probably be if we start seeing street parking or road parking along those lines. But I think given the existing use, where there's no concerns with the car parking at the moment, it's always quite open, and they are providing additional 26 for a 25% increase. So we are quite confident that the parking will suffice.
Noted. Thank you very much. Okay, that is all the questions we have of the presenters and the local government. So we might then move to the responsible authority report. Could I seek a mover and a seconder for the recommendation as presented? Anyone want to move the officer's recommendation?
That's good.
Thank you, Councillor Terry. Moved Councillor Terry, seconded Clayton Hyam. Councillor Terry, would you like to talk to this primary motion?
There's not much to say, really. It's a well-used site there, and obviously it's just really an extension of the existing site. We've talked issues in relation to the public art and fencing and that and the issue in relation to the encroachment. So I would just like to flag to add that condition as an amendment that was put in that application from the city in relation to the encroachment, but we'll deal with that when we get to that. Thank you.
Okay, Clayton Hyam, would you like to talk as seconder?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I fully support the proposal, including the requirement for public art. I don't think the case has been put, in my view, that it's not related. There is a relationship, and I think it's important that that we uphold the policy in this case. Not always, but in this case, I think there's an opportunity in Chester Pass Road or even in the other street for public art, but also like the proposition of it being pulled and some form of public art being put together by the city in a nearby location. I wanted to add in the officer's recommendation for the area that's encroaching, and maybe it's with the movers agreement that we could add in, and I think we'll just put it on the end as being condition 18. As the officer says, prior to the commencement of development, the enclosure marked in red on the stamped approved plan shall be removed and landscaping subsequently reinstated to the satisfaction of the City of Albany.
So are you moving that as an amendment?
Yes.
Amendment? Are you happy to second that, Councillor Terry? Yes. Are we all in favour of that new condition being added as an amendment? Those in favour?
Yes.
Carried unanimously. Let's add that in as a last condition.
And also, perhaps picking up on the presiding member's comments about condition 13, that does need to be tightened. I'm wondering if the officers have any words that would help in tightening condition 13.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're just having a quick think about it at the moment.
Can I might deal with that in a minute.
Yes.
Have you got any other?
No, that's fine.
All right. Do any other panel members wish to speak to the primary motion? I've got an amendment that I'd like to move in relation to condition 13. I might do that now, actually. I would like to move an amendment to delete condition 13. So I'd like to move that. Does anyone second that? Thank you, Mr. Carls. The reason I want to do that is I think the condition is vague and open-ended. I think noise conditions are covered by the noise regs, and I would think that issues of vibration, smell, smoke and dust should be dealt with via the city's health local law. I had a quick squiz of it yesterday, and I think it is captured there. I think the condition will be difficult to enforce, and it's not really appropriate to put, in my view, a condition like that on a planning approval. Would you like to talk to that as seconder to that amendment?
Yeah, I'd support that. I'd agree that these are matters that are dealt with via the advice note referring to environmental regulations, environmental protection, noise regulations, and local provisions. So I think it can be dealt with via those matters.
Does any other panel member wish to speak for or against that amending motion? No? Can we then ask with a show of hands whether you support the amending motion to delete condition 13? Carried unanimously. Anything else?
I did have a question about one of the conditions. It's now the time.
Yep.
Yep. So in condition 7 related to the public art proposal, the second part of that condition refers to certain actions to be completed prior to occupancy of the development. I suppose have some issue with this. If there is a payment of cash in lieu, then that second part being prior to occupancy, the details approved for the public art proposal shall be implemented, completed, and thereafter maintained for the satisfaction of the City of Albany, would not necessarily be in the control of the developer. See if there would be any suggestion as to how that could be closed from the council.
City officers, can you answer that question?
I understand your point with that one. I'm just thinking how it can be reworded. I mean, if there was a cash in lieu provided, in our opinion, that would clear that condition. But I understand perhaps the wording needs to be amended slightly to reflect that.
Do you have suggestions?
Maybe prior to occupancy of the development, the details approved for the public art proposal shall be implemented, completed, and thereafter maintained, or other suitable arrangements being made with the City of Albany.
Yeah, I think that's okay. Please open enough.
You're moving that as an amendment?
Yep, so I amend.
Would anyone like to second that as an amendment? Nathan Hyam, would you like to speak to that amendment?
No, that's self-explanatory.
All those in favour of that amendment? Carried unanimously. Anything else?
You just note that support the proposal, considering its suitable development in this location, being intensification of an existing use. And as per the responsible authority report, the proposed development generally complies with the requirements of the planning scheme with some minor variations, which are mostly justified. Noting from the comment of the councillor from the City of Albany on the clearing of vegetation, there is an advice note in the after conditions which relates to the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation being contacted in relation to requirements for a clearing permit. And I'd also note that the environment report that was accompanying the development application noted part of the area proposed to be cleared as a potential ecological community, so that would need to be addressed at that point separate to this process. With regards to public art, I think the local planning policy is reasonably clear and looks to broader objectives around amenity, and I think this proposal meets the intent of the local planning policy to contribute to the policy objectives. While I understand the reasons put forward in terms of the street frontage not being on Chester Pass Road, I understand the position put forward by the City of Albany. That's it from me.
Thank you. Before we speak to or close off on the primary motion, I think I'd like to move an amendment just to delete condition 17. It's an administrative issue that was raised with the City of Albany. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Councillor Terry. The reason being it's an error, should be deleted. It was going to refer to a connection to a water corp sewage system, which is already captured under condition 11. All those in favour of that amending motion? Carried unanimously. All right, now we will deal with or close off on the primary motion. As Does any other panel member wish to speak to the primary motion before I add some comments and then ask Councillor Terry to close? Okay. Very briefly, comments from myself. I'm happy to support the proposal. It's consistent with the objectives of the zone it's in. It'll have no negative impact on the surrounding area, and the new landscape and site works will lift the appearance of the site. In this case, I will support the amended condition 7 for public art, but I would suggest that although it's in the city scheme, I would suggest having a look at a few other policies that there perhaps needs to be some nuancing in that policy, because it wasn't awfully clear to me how that money could be used if it was used as a contribution. So that's just a comment that I'd like to make. But otherwise, I think the proposal will have no negative impact, lift the appearance of the site, and the new landscaping will certainly give it a facelift. Councillor Terry, before we vote on the primary motion, would you like to close?
Just that it'd be a good addition. It's good to see that Metrol needing to expand the operation here. Obviously shows that there's a lot of construction work going on in Albany, and we certainly do need that extra capacity to build what we would like to get done around the city. It was a good discussion. Read the art policy. I must admit, coming into the meeting, I was thinking that I would probably support deleting it, but having another look at the policy itself and the discussion that we've had today, I'm more than happy to keep that in there, and just support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we vote on the primary motion, I just want to clarify for the benefit of the minute takers that the primary motion will now include an amendment to conditions 7 that talks about engaging with the City of Albany about alternatives, and I think that related to the use of the funds for public art. There was an amending motion to delete condition 13. There was an amending motion to delete condition 17 and an amending motion to add the new condition to deal with the encroachment into the road reserve. Is everyone satisfied that those are the amending motions that form part of the primary motion that we'll now vote on? Yes? Okay. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 4 on the agenda, Form 2, we don't have any with this agenda today. Item 5, Section 31, reconsiderations, none today. Part D, other business. The current SAT applications are listed on the RDAP website, none of which relate to Albany. Moving to general business, is there any general business any member wishes to raise? If not, I declare the meeting closed at 1:43 p.m. and thank everyone for being in attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.